So let's start step 10. In this step, we look at the Angular router, which is a major feature of Angular applications. It allows applications to define which component to load based on a URL route. For example, here we arrive at the slash, meaning our local host, which will later be deployed to a known URL. But then if we want to switch to one view rather than another, which is what's used in single-page applications or SPAs, so basically all applications built with Angular, React, JS, and others, the way to move from one view to another uses the router. The router handles navigation via the URL. So for example, when we go to localhost, contact, localhost, cart, home, and so on, we use this mechanism to let the application know that the user is trying to access a specific URL so that the Angular application can pick up that URL and load the corresponding components. We generally say that these routes are features, views, or full-fledged pages in their own right. This is also where we start to understand our core, feature, and shared system. We've already seen a bit of the shared part since we've already placed the BalanceCard there, as well as some directives and so on. And the features, which we haven't touched yet but are about to, because features are mainly use date list initially to group together the application's features in the sense of its views. Now, for our goal in step 10, I'm moving over there and I'm going to look at the starting file. The goal is going to be to create a MyWallet feature whose purpose will finally be to use the router. Because up until now, if we look at what we've done in there, here it's just for visualization. Because in IntelliJ, I select commit 9, the previous commit. Specifically, in commit 9, we had modified the app.component.html. I see here that the router outlet is the tag that will allow Angular to inject the components defined by the routing based on the URL requested by the user. And so Angular will, as we'll see in a moment, look into the configurations we provide to determine, okay, the user is going to contact, so I'll display the contact component. Up until now, we haven't used it. We've left it empty. It wasn't a big deal since we didn't have any router configuration on it, so the athlete router didn't receive anything, it was empty, and didn't serve much purpose. And we built something just above it. The goal of this step 10 will therefore be a first introduction to the Angular router, and the objective will be to move this into a separate component and to define the router configuration to say, when you arrive at the MyWallet, because if we recall a bit from the visualization, it was a list of the different currencies we had. For example, we can imagine that this would be a representation of a wallet in a crypto application or in a wallet application in the general sense. So we could have several currency zeros, bitcoins, etc. So the goal now is to move this into a MyWallet component, which will then be a feature in the sense of the folder architecture approach. We're going to place it in there. We're going to create this feature and then set up the configuration. I'm moving over to 09 so that you don't get the answer right away. And I'm moving specifically the main point S. Let's start over there. I mentioned in one of the previous commits that we had the app config, which indeed brings in various configurations, but maybe it's a bit difficult at first glance, so we kind of skipped over it. Now we're going to start digging into it. We're not going to talk about that thing. We're going to talk about this here. Here we understand that this is an application config. So we can imagine that inside this object, there will be several configurations, including one called provide router. That's what I've been saying up to now. It's that we are going to use the router. Using it is essentially the mechanism for navigating from one component to another by using the URL requested by the user and providing it with route parameters. All of this is generated by default by Angular because it's easy to imagine that no matter the application, we'll probably need a router. So this is a provider supplied by Angular, and there's not really any need to go into detail about it. However, what's interesting is this one. I click on it to go there, and it takes us to app.routes.ts. And here we have something like this, a root object of type routes with an SS, because it's going to be an array of different routes. And inside, it's actually something quite common, quite natural. We define a path. For example, my path, and then a component. I put app component because I have it. Of course, you need to import it. And actually, that's how it's going to work. We're going to define a path. We're going to define a listening URL, a URL on which Angular will react and tell it, when you arrive at this URL, you load this component. It's that simple, okay? Now, I'm finally moving back to, yes, that's right, I have this. So for this step 10, create a new feature called MyWallet, which will contain, we need to move overall the content we had before, especially the balance cards, and set up Angular to respond to MyWallet. I'll let you do that, and we'll meet up right after. Let's see how it turns out. Visually, there might be something a little surprising at first, but now, since we've moved everything from the slash, that is from the default URL to MyWallet, obviously, when we don't specify anything, any more reasons, we've set it up, as we'll see in a moment, so that going to MyWallet loads everything we had up to now if we access the slash, meaning without MyWallet after it, we no longer have anything. Now we need to configure this to load what we had before. As for the configuration, it's something that looks a lot like what I just showed earlier. We define a path, MyWallet, and we load this new component, MyWallet component. What you need to notice is that MyWallet component comes from the feature. It's a good way to get started. I really recommend that you always do it this way. When you have components that really define a separate view, a separate page in your application, it's a feature and you put it directly as is under the feature folder. I created this MyWallet component, which only contains what we did in step 9. Without the router. I moved this in there, and of course, I also transferred the TypeScript code that went with it. Okay. If I now move to the final step to take a look at the explanations for this stage, indeed, we created our MyWallet component. We moved what we previously had in the app component into it. And actually, this is what allows us to have an application that can finally start to grow gradually, because by adding feature components on new URLs, we get a multitude of possible functionalities. Currently, we have MyWallet, but we could have settings, home, contact. There's really no limit, which is quite interesting, because afterwards, you can imagine having buttons in different features to let the user jump from one URL to another. And we'll unload the feature component, so we'll unload MyWallet and load home instead. That's how navigation within our application will work. In the end, it's a structure for all the features we'll create in the future. That brings us to the end of step 10, and we can start step 11.